Hello and welcome back to the next part of this library rental template system which we have been creating over the last few videos. So we are now on the next part and we will now continue with the applications used for loans. And I can see already I'd actually created an extra application here which is then the form loan detail. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one now. And then that application will be gone. And we are left now with these three applications. So let's go ahead and check the box at the bottom here and edit all of those. And Scriptcase will open them all for me so that I can start to make adjustments to each of these applications. And I think what we will do is we will start here with the grid loaned. And if we go ahead and run that one, first of all, we have here some various options. We have here the detail display. We don't need that. We have the edit. Everything's linked. We need to update here the person object information. And I think we want to add a photo line to this as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So here within our grid loaned, I will deselect here the search, detail, summary, and chart. We don't want to use those within this application. And for the grid, as per usual, I'll set 100% width. Save that and then jump straight into our edit fields. So here I will leave the ID here. I will, however, adjust these fields here, removing the ID from the labels. And then we can actually leave those near enough as they are. So we have here the person object. Now those are currently as IDs. So if I come here to the fields and then the person ID, we can then link that then to our persons table using here the lookup. So if I come then here to the persons table, we want the name displayed and you can choose the connection. If you like, you can concat that and also display the email address at the same time. One other option I want to enable here is also the bold text so that the name is bolded when it's displayed. So I'll go ahead and save that and then come here to the object ID field which we had. And here again we need to apply a lookup so that then that connects here to our objects table and displays the name of our object. And again we choose the connection and let's go ahead and run that here and then we can see what that looks like now. And we have then already the fields filled in. Okay, so then we have the names here, the objects, as well as the date and the current state. So let's also enable here the refined search. And if I come here to the refined search and select those fields again, and in this case, we can add here the person ID, even the object, and we could even add the date and also the state. So let's add those. Click save, and then we can come here to the edit fields and make adjustments to those again. So we have here for the person ID, you may want to enable or leave the see more. The same for the objects, because we have many people or many objects in there, then we would want to enable that option so we can see more persons or more objects, but we will see that in a moment. The date and state, we do not need the see more option. Well, I lie actually, possibly for the date at a later stage, you may want to have that enabled. But then here for the date field, we can adjust that for month and year, for instance, and save that. And if I go ahead and run now the grid application, we now have our refined search here, and we have here also the individual persons that we can choose or the individual object, as well as say for instance the monthly dates, which is quite nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove those by clicking these options up here, and that will remove and give us all a nice option again. Of course, if I select multiple, notice that I do have the option here to reset as well, so I can click that in one go and that will remove all of them in one go. Okay, so we have a few more things here that we want to do. The first thing I'll do is here, first of all, add the new field, and we want that to be the photo field. Okay, so I choose here the type, image file name, and we'll say photo and create. And then what we need to do then, because if I run this now, it's not going to display any image at all. It's just going to be an empty field because I still need to give it some data to display. And we do that here within the events and then on record. Okay, so then here on the on record, which we want to actually have the images displayed. Now here for the photo, first of all, we need to make sure that we've added the objects, which I kind of added behind the screen there. So do make sure that you have the path added in here, because if you don't have the path, then it doesn't matter what we really add here on the on record, because then the image will still not be displayed. Okay, so we could use the examples here, but for a change, I'm actually going to go ahead and code it. So if we go SQL equals, and then we want to set up our select. So make sure I close that there. So we type in here select, and then it's the photo field we want. And that is then getting it from the object. Okay, so make sure I spell that correctly. Otherwise, of course, if there's a spelling mistake, it will also give another error. So ID. Okay, so we have our photo field from the objects table where the ID equals. Now that needs to then equal here our object ID underscore ID field. Okay, because it's on record. So every time the record loads, it will check here the object ID of that record and then display the image accordingly. But of course, at the moment, we're only getting it. So let's add then here the SC macro, SC lookup. And with that, then we can then say, well, we want a data set, and then we load here our SQL, which we just created here on top, just like so. And that will then already establish a data set connection to our database, and we can then load that. So then we want our if statement. Okay, so if something happens, then that is then what we want to have displayed. So let's go ahead and do this, and then else if we want there also. So I'm just going to add these now so that it's then ready. And then we want here also another else at the end here. And just like so, so that we have our initial if else statement ready. Okay, so for the if statement, we need to add here, first of all, the data set. So if the data set, so DS, we have that as, and if that equals false, okay, because then we just type in false here. So if that doesn't exist, then we want to output an error. So we can add here echo, and then just type an error message in here. In fact, we want a bit more. We actually want the actual error message. So let's just type here error, first of all, error, and that equals, and then here we want to combine that. So we add a dot, and then we add the variable ds underscore error. Or arrow, I think it is. Okay, so once we've done that one, we can then look at our next else if, and that one here is if it's empty. So we'll just add in here no data. We can add an error message in there if you wanted to, but then for now I'll just say if it's empty. Okay, and then in here we want to add then the data set again, just like that. So if the data set is empty, then it will output nothing. Of course, like I said, you can add an error message in there or something else if you please. And then here in this last else, we dump our variable, okay, or our data set, should I say. Okay, let's have that correct. So we dump our data set, and we do that then here with our photo. Now do make sure that the fields are always correct. Otherwise, you will get some weird error message sometimes, and it may take a moment to figure that out. So let's have a quick look at that then in a moment, how we would actually deal with that. So let's have a look here. We add here, first of all, our data set. So that should then output our image. So let's go ahead and run that. And then we can see what that looks like. Okay, so you can see here, I actually have debug enabled right now because I actually did have an error message the first time I typed that out. Yes, I re-recorded. And we now have our images here. So how did I enable this? And of course, it's a little confusing, but it gives you all of the data according to your debug information. And we enable that here at the bottom with application and settings. Okay, so I'm going to disable it now. And then here we have debug mode. So I'll switch that off, run that again, and then this time the grid will be correctly displayed just as we wanted. Okay, so we have the images displayed here. And as I was saying, the error I was having was really, again, just a typo with the field. So I was having objects instead of object ID, and I enabled the debug mode to see why the error message I was getting, as well as to try and figure out, where I had gone wrong. sometimes you go a little blind with the code you write. So enabling that really opens up your eyes and helps you identify the mistakes that you possibly made. Okay, so now that is ready. There is still one change we're going to make to this. I'm going to leave this open for now, and then we'll jump here to our form loaned. Okay, so if I go ahead and run this one, we can see that we have again here our person ID, object ID, the state, as well as the date. So let's go ahead and have a quick look at that here. And as per usual, let's change here the form settings to 100% width. And then we can start adjusting our fields. So I'll come straight here to field, the person ID. And here the person ID, we want to actually change here, well, remove here the ID from that field. And we can then also change here our select. Now you can change it manually. I prefer to use the create select sometimes just to make sure that I select the correct fields, because with so many variables and everything in your head, it's a little odd sometimes to try and remember exactly which table am I selecting or which field am I selecting within that table. Okay, so now for the object field, we do the same. Remove there the ID and come here then to the objects, ensure that the name is displayed, enable the connection. And if I go ahead and run that now, we will have that then again displayed with the correct information instead of the IDs. And there we have it. Okay, so there is still a slight change I want to make here, and that is here the state. Remember, we had that previously as a label. So if I come here to the state, and again, we will have that as a label field. And if I run that again, we will have then our form loaned nearly ready. Okay, so there is again another change I want to make here. The object here, we don't want to have this as a drop menu. Again, that also wants to here be a label field. So if we come here, we have no options for this field to be a label field here. So we need to actually do that manually. And instead of having here the object ID, I'm going to go ahead and add an extra field in here. And I'm going to go next. And let's call that then the object name. And I don't want to create a new block, so I will uncheck that. I'll go create. And what I'm going to do then is create another select here on our event. So on load, we then open or select here the object ID. So if we go again, SQL, and that equals then our select. So let's come here, select, and name it was from objects. Okay, let me go caps here also, from objects. And then that is where our ID equals our object ID. So let me add in here the field object, if I spell it correctly, object underscore ID. Okay, just confirm object underscore ID, object underscore ID. So just like that, we have then our select by. Now I do want to also order this. So let me then add here the order by name. Okay, and we can then close that off, and that is our SQL select statement ready. And then of course we then use the macro SC lookup to simplify the database connection, which is really great. And there we just then add then here the data set again, comma, and SQL, which is then initiating here our select statement. Okay, so we need to add here again an if statement, and I could just copy paste it really from the other one, but for a change I'm actually in a mood for typing. So here we go, else if, and I'm just going to add the correct brackets in there. Of course, otherwise that will also generate some errors. And we then also want an else here, and then we can start to add exactly what we want here. So we have here again for the if, and that is then here curly brackets ds. So if our ds, our data set, again equals false, okay, then we will output here an error message, and we can say again echo, and let's error again exactly the same way as previously, echo error equals, and then dot, and then it's ds underscore error. Okay, and don't forget to close that off, and that will then output an error message for us if there is a problem with the connection. Otherwise there's no data. Okay, in that case, I'm not going to display anything. And then in the last section here on our else, so when an object exists, we'll say the object name. So our field that we have just created will equal here the data set. And 0, 0 again. And just like that, that should then output that. So let's go ahead and run that again. And of course, if I have any error messages again, remember, enable the debug mode and you will have it displayed. And there we have an error. So for sure, somewhere here, I've actually just made a mistake. I do wonder if anybody can see it. I can't right now. So again, what I'll do is I'll enable here the debug mode. And let's have a quick look. It's more than likely something along the name of the table that I'm selecting or anything along those lines. Oh no, we're actually a real error here. Okay, so on load, let's come back here. So select name from objects, where object ID equals order by name. Okay, SC lookup DS, comma SQL. Let's remove that space. Right. Okay, and there we have it. I was missing a bracket there, it seems. And now we have that correct. And you see again, I enabled the debug mode to see exactly what's happening. And if I come back down here to settings again, I can disable that once more and run that again. Now there is still one change I want to make here, and that is here the object. So we have here the name displayed. So let's make some slight adjustments there. And if I come here to the object name, so that I want as a label field, okay? And I will then also come here to the edit fields, and then I'll move that up. And then what I'm going to do then is remove the object name on insert and remove then the selection on update. So if I go ahead and run that now, we will only have now here the name displayed like so. And if I go add new, we then have the drop down menu. So just like that, we can accomplish something like that. Of course, the state is there also, so we can remove that also from the new. We don't need that there either. Okay, so we still have a few options, a few things here to apply, and that would be then the update of our state, because we have here, when we run it, we have this state returned or not returned in some cases, and of course, that would then also need to be updated. So we come here then to the on after insert, okay, and in here we can then register the further details. Okay, and to speed things up this time, because I seem to be taking a little long with these videos today, so I'm going to go ahead and just paste some script in here, and this will then modify the status of our object when we insert. Okay, so this will then insert, let me capitalize this, insert into loans detail, which is not correct, as loan detail, so I'll correct that there. We have then the object ID. The object ID, it is indicating that it has started. We're presenting then the date. So these are then our values that we're inserting, the ID, the date. The object loan status has started, and now the object is loaned with then the object ID. Okay, so we apply that, and then we also update the status of our loaned object. So if I change that here and come here, set as well. Okay, insert into loan detail. Right, and there we are setting the status of our object to loaned, where the object ID equals X. Okay, so then we also want to update that for when we have the changes. So if we come then here to the on before delete, so let's come here on before delete. So we then actually go ahead and delete that. Well, before we change that, we want to update the status of our object, and that's exactly what we're going to do then on before we delete the product. So the loan status, should I say. Okay, so when we remove the loan, then the status of the object again becomes available. Okay, so that is important to apply there. And of course, again, as always, be sure that we have here our options here ready. So I'll capitalize this so it's a little clear again, and we set that then the status as available. So I'll go ahead and save that. And that is then our form loan pretty much ready. And if I run that, we could go ahead and actually provide a new option here. So I say, yeah, I've gone ahead and borrowed something here. Let's choose here the Bosch screwdriver. I'll add that. And of course, somewhere I have an error message. So it's always good to actually go ahead and test what you're doing. So here, the on after insert, this is not working very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that and I'm going to place it here on before insert. So for sure, there is a mistake there within the table selection that I have. So let's just enable debug again and check that out. So let's go ahead and add new again. And I'll say Jamie is borrowing the Bosch screwdriver and on the 24th, add that. And again, we have nothing, but now we are able to enable here the debug. So I come here to settings again, debug mode. I can run that. And then I can just go ahead and make sure that the insert is working correctly. So I go add new. And again, I'll choose myself, Bosch screwdriver, add a date in there, add, and there we have it. So we have an error with our insert. Okay, so insert into loan detail. And here, so what I'm going to do then is I will silently, behind the scenes, quickly check the database again and ensure that our on insert or our on after insert, as it will then be enabled. And then we can move it back to the on after insert, okay? Because if we have it there, we will not be able to see the debug information that this then also outputs for us. Okay, and there I think we have it now in order. And really, again, it's down to translation because details, of course, that's going to be a big difference. And you may notice I also modified here the into. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that from the before insert and place that back here on the on after insert. So that then updated or inserted even, because it's doing both. We're inserting into a table and we're also updating a table after we have inserted this new loan. Okay, so once that's done, we can go ahead and save that. And that is then pretty much ready for us. Okay, so that form is pretty much there. We are still going to make some adjustments here and some changes. We actually want to create another grid and display data here within this form, as well as here the grid loaned. But for now, let's jump here to the grid loan detail. Let's run that one. Let's have a quick look at what that is like. And there we have a non-existing link application look. So that is, of course, an issue. So let's have a look. Okay. That is, of course, from the application I had deleted, if you can remember. So you can't see the error messages there. For some reason, they're always nearly off my screen. I don't know why that is, but that's just something I have to deal with. If I make the screen full size, it's the same as well. It sometimes goes off the side and it's a little difficult to see. Anyway, so let's first of all remove here the application link for the form loan detail application, which we had previously deleted. So what we have to do then is delete here that link. That would go okay, and it's gone now. And now if I run the grid application, we will no longer have this error message. And as you see, the grid is now displayed. So let's jump into this, add here the loan ID, the object ID, and have a quick look at this, what we need to do here. So this final grid here, we don't really need to make any changes here. We can actually leave this as it is. I'm not even going to adjust the width of this. It can just stay like so. So what we can do then is we can actually go ahead and close these applications for now. And we can then come back in the next video where we will create a new grid application and have that as a master detail within our form, as well as here our grid loaned. So be sure to check back in the next video and I'll see you soon.